I mentioned before, Daniel Bryan, WrestleMania, a lot of rumors going around. There's a report online that is, I believe, credited to Mike Johnson over at PWInsider.com that Daniel Bryan's match for WrestleMania has been penciled in. Nothing is ever set in stone. You never know. Somebody goes down with an injury and plans always change. But it's pretty solid, it sounds like, that Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 30 is going to go one-on-one with Sheamus. Sheamus has been out since last summer. He had a serious shoulder injury that was operated on. He was teasing only a couple of months ago that the shoulder wasn't healing as quickly, and so he really didn't know when he was going to come back. And a lot of people called BS on that, including myself. I expect to see him at the Royal Rumble, and if not, I'm sure very shortly thereafter he'll be back. I think he's fine, or just about fine. And, you know, it takes me back to a column I did on Yahoo last summer. And I know I plugged it. A lot of you guys read it and gave me feedback on it. If you go back and check, I did a column for Yahoo, and that reminds me, I haven't done one in a while. I gotta come up with something to write about for them. But I did one on how Sheamus' injury could be the best thing that ever happened to him in his career. It could be the best news that he could possibly ask for, because Sheamus was going nowhere. Sheamus was doing nothing last year. He was a bully. He would come out. That whole storyline with Mark Henry, he was a giant dick to Mark Henry. They had, all these different contests, arm wrestling contests, and Sheamus was just a total heel. And Mark Henry, to me anyway, was the babyface. That whole thing was just weird. Then he went into a feud with Cody and with Damian Sandow when they were the Rhodes Scholars. This guy had no direction. And this guy at one time had been the World Heavyweight Champion. So, from Sheamus' point of view, my logic was, he goes away for a while, he comes back fresh, and the guy who put him out of action was Daniel Bryan. They were part of that Money in the Bank ladder match in Philadelphia back in July, and Bryan was the one who knocked him off the ladder and caused Sheamus to suffer an injury. I don't know that they ever acknowledged that on television, but it's in the footage if you go back and watch. Now, I did this article. Let me check the date here. I'm pretty sure it was in August. Yeah, it was August 28th, 2013 is when I did this article. And the argument that I put forth was that Sheamus should come back as a heel. He should come back as a heel on behalf of the Authority to go after Daniel Bryan as revenge for Bryan taking away 6 months of his career, 6 months of his life. From a storyline point of view, makes sense. Plus, Sheamus and Bryan have had some great matches before. These two guys have great chemistry. I have no problem seeing Daniel Bryan and Sheamus in a wrestling match, because I'm sure that at the very worst, it would be a very good match. And at best, it could be an excellent match. That's not the problem here. What makes this different, and the reason I don't like this news at all, if this is true, is because in the article I did, I argued that it makes sense if Daniel Bryan is the champion. Sheamus comes back on behalf of Triple H and Stephanie, goes after Bryan to take the title away from him. This was back when I thought Bryan, how foolish of me, that Bryan might actually have a run with the belt, which he never did. But the whole premise of it was that Bryan would be the champion, and that you could end up with maybe a Sheamus-Daniel Bryan championship match at WrestleMania. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of people who laugh at that, who scoff at the notion of that, and it is kind of funny to look back on that now, because Bryan never did get to the level that I thought he was about to get to. They never gave him a real chance. They gave the belt to Orton. They transitioned Bryan into a completely different feud, and it's been Orton who's been headlining all these pay-per-views, and nobody really talks about that either, by the way. There are a lot of people out there who say, oh, Daniel Bryan's not good for ratings, he's not good for pay-per-view buy rates, but they completely ignore the fact that all these pay-per-views that have done terrible business over the last several months, and I guess Hell in a Cell's number wasn't terrible, but that probably had more to do with John Cena coming back. Randy Orton is the common denominator here. Randy Orton has headlined, if you count that cash-in at SummerSlam, every single pay-per-view since August. Beat Bryan for the belt at SummerSlam. Headlined with Bryan at the pay-per-view in September. Night of Champions. Battleground. Hell in a Cell. Survivor Series with Big Show, which did terrible business. The unification match with Cena at TLC. I don't know how that show did. But the common denominator here is Orton. Orton's not exactly lighting the world on fire in terms of the business that he's doing. And here he is again at the Royal Rumble, headlining with John Cena. So Bryan never really had a shot at that level to get the title and to just go off on his own and do his own thing. At the time, though, I thought it would make perfect sense. And it would give Sheamus something high profile to do when he came back, because he was doing absolutely nothing before he got hurt. Nobody wanted to see him. Nobody liked him. You know, in the column I even pointed out, remember when John Cena picked his opponent for SummerSlam? They had everybody out there on Raw on the stage, and he's going person by person asking the people, well, what do you think of Ryback? What do you think of Alberto Del Rio? And then he gets to Sheamus, who was supposedly like the number 2 or 3 babyface in the company at the time. Probably 3, behind Punk. Maybe 4, if you count Bryan. But he mentioned Sheamus' name, and nobody cared. No, people booed. They had no interest in seeing Sheamus wrestle John Cena for the championship. That's how far that guy had fallen. There were at least some people who used to like the guy. Something must have happened from then to now. So he would come back as a heel, he would go after Bryan, Bryan would already be the champion, and you kind of build it from there. Well, Bryan is not the champion. And Bryan deserves a lot better than essentially a mid-card match on the biggest show of the year. Okay, even if you're not a fan of putting Daniel Bryan in a title match, that's fine. I know there's a lot of people who don't get the love for Daniel Bryan. They think he's too short, they think he's too boring, all he does is kick, he's got no personality, he's awkward on the microphone. It's all very subjective. Fine. If that's how you feel, no problem. You can say, sure, he's not the strongest promo and he's not the biggest guy. No shit. But that doesn't mean the guy doesn't deserve to be in one of the top, let's say, 3 matches on the show. There are a ton of different guys that you can plug Bryan in there with. What the hell ever happened to the Bryan vs. Triple H feud they were teasing? I guess that went the way of the Triple H Big Show feud, the big match that never happened. Bryan and Shawn Michaels, they were teasing stuff with them. I don't know what the hell the point of that was if they weren't going to have Shawn come back and wrestle. Bryan and Cena? That's a rematch I wouldn't mind seeing. Bryan Undertaker? Any of those guys. Bryan and Brock? I pitched that idea before. I could see any of those matches. Bryan and Sheamus for no title, just on the undercard, buried by all of these other matches that they're going to have. There's at least 4 or 5 other matches that are going to be higher up on the card than Sheamus and Bryan. And I'll tell you what, if they go to WrestleMania with this match, I'm calling it right now. I see them opening the show with it. Would not surprise me at all. A repeat of WrestleMania 28. Only this time I would hope the match goes a little bit longer than 18 seconds. Maybe double that. Let it go 30 or 40 seconds this time before you end it. So, I don't like this idea. I did do the column. I had some people point that out to me. I'm not backtracking. It's just that the circumstances are different. I mean, it makes sense, but I think to really make it work, Bryan needs to be the champion. That's the whole point. Sheamus sees that this guy has gone on to much bigger things. Meanwhile, he's been sitting on his ass at home, recuperating. Now he comes back. No wonder he turns heel. He's pissed off. He wants revenge. And in the process, he wants to take the belt from Bryan. Without the belt, this doesn't excite me at all. And going into the biggest show of the year, I just feel the guy should be a little bit higher up on the card. So if this is true, and this is the best that they can come up with for Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 30, that's a big letdown.